Ducks fans, are you ready? You are listening to the Ducks and Pucks podcast with your hosts, Mike Walters and Eddie Jones. This is the #1 home for Anaheim Ducks talk and analysis. Here we go.
All right, welcome back to Ducks and Pucks. We have a great show for you this week. We're going to get caught up on a lot of player news, actually a lot of former player news. Matt Beleskey, Ryan Whitney, Todd Ewen, all in the news. Also Clayton Stoner with some bear trouble that we're going to cover as well. We'll recap also some of the prospect camp that's been going on in the training camp as it's in progress now. But let's look at some of the former Ducks, Eddie. Recently in the news, this story is a little bit older. I meant to put it up a little bit sooner, but Matt Beleskey, he participated along with several players, Connor McDavid, Tanner Pearson of the Kings, and a bunch of other players around the NHL in Hockey Night in Barrie, which was another good event, similar to the one that Hagelin had played in over in Sweden. This one in Canada to raise funds for the local hospital there, Eddie.
Yeah, and it's I believe a bunch of guys from up in that area, or at least in and around that area, just having a tournament to play hockey and being able to raise money for charity. And I mean, you see it often, like you said, with Hagelin in Sweden, and obviously coming before Subban's big donation. But it's nice to see a lot of players get involved in charity, and we hopefully get to see it more often.
Yeah, definitely. It was, I guess, a good event. If you go look on the website, you can look and see there's a video of Matt Beleskey, and there's a promo video of the event as well, so you can catch up on some of the action there on ducksandpucks.com. Another former player that was in the news, Ryan Whitney. He finally retired after several seasons in the NHL. He actually didn't play last year in the NHL. He played in Russia, but he announced his retirement today via Twitter. We put that out there. He also was involved in that trade, Eddie, that a lot of people aren't really happy about. A lot of people brought up to my attention again today, as I had included in the article. But as you remember, he was with the Ducks for just 2 seasons, 2 partial seasons, that is, and he was involved in the Chris Kunitz trade.
Yeah, and obviously it's not any big news regarding the Ducks, like you said, only being there for 2 seasons and being part of that trade that a lot of people remember fondly. But when any player that used to play for the Ducks retires or does something, we end up hearing a little bit about it from the fans, and obviously, like you said, getting a lot of flack from people about the trade that happened with sending Kunitz away, and still resonates with some of the fans.
Yeah, I was surprised, not so much that that a reaction came out of the fans, because I knew it would come up as soon as I posted it. But some funny comments, people saying, "Hey, let's thank Pittsburgh," and they should thank us, because of Kunitz going over there, and then obviously the success that the Penguins have had in the last several years since then as well. So it's just kind of lighthearted humor today, but that's what happened. Whitney's retired. And that's just some more former news, and then some other news that came out this week, and some extremely sad news. Todd Ewen, one of the original Mighty Ducks, passed away on Saturday, and one of the updates that just came out today on Sunday is that it's believed that he actually committed suicide by shooting himself. So it's very unfortunate. Todd Ewen was a big time fan favorite. Eddie, if you remember, he would protect Korea and Solani back in the Mighty Duck days when the Ducks really only had one offensive line, but he was a stand-up guy and was there for all the teammates.
Yeah, and this is gonna spark another investigation into the role of the enforcer and how the impact of that role has on the player and his life after hockey. And we've seen that a lot with Derek Bugard and other guys who have seemingly taken their life after being in that role for so many years in the NHL. And it's definitely going to come up again, and if concussions and fighting and playing in that role has an effect on them, and it's obviously unfortunate to see again, even if he didn't end up killing himself, but it's just something that they're going to have to look into.
Yeah, I agree with you, Eddie. Calgary, there was some news out of Calgary that reported it as, being what it is. Of course, it's still under investigation by the police. So it appears to be that way. When we find out more information, we'll obviously update it on the website or on the social media. But either way, just extremely sad. Todd Ewen was only 49 years old. He was just a really, really good guy. He stood up for the team, fought hard, and like you said, the role of the enforcer is definitely something that's going to come to issue. I would think for the NHL for the next couple of years.
Yeah, and it's a reoccurring issue too, and like I said with the former players and this already being an issue, it's just unfortunate to see it keep coming up, and I mean every time it happens, it becomes a big deal around the league, and you would think that you would hope that it doesn't have to something like this has to happen for them to continually investigate it, but luckily we see that role diminishing in the NHL today, and hopefully this isn't as much a problem in the future.
Yeah, exactly, Eddie. And moving along into some more news, some more unfortunate news, we had current Ducks player Clayton Stoner was actually charged with several different counts in Vancouver related to a bear hunting incident in May of 2013, Eddie. It came up, and it looks like his court date is going to be October 9th, the day before the Ducks play the Sharks. So we're going to have to see how that goes. But it's kind of an interesting situation, Eddie. Being in Vancouver, they actually allow this if you have a permit to hunt bears for sport.
Yeah, I'm not too familiar with the charges being placed against them and how the laws work in that area for hunting, but I mean it could end up being a pretty serious situation. I don't think it's up there with the current Patrick Kane situation and all of the problems coming out of LA as well, but it's an issue that we're gonna have to keep track of, because if it doesn't get resolved by the start of the season, he may not be able to suit up.
Yeah, and that's a question that our buddy Dr. Fowl had off Twitter. He wanted to know how the Ducks would address it and whatnot. And looking into some of the things that I've seen, it looks like it's a fine that's only the real issue. It doesn't look like it carries any jail time. They're saying that the fine is usually about 25,000 in U.S. Could go as high as 250,000 from what the Vancouver Sun reported in this article, Eddie. So, I think that's what's going to happen. Obviously, I don't know. We're going to have to let it play out in court. But a lot of people are upset about it, and I agree with them. I don't think hunting for sport is a way to go, and it's unfortunate that it had to be Stoner. But I also have to question kind of the Vancouver government there. They had a poll recently where close to 90% of the people are against this, and they actually allow it and you can go get a permit. So, I mean, it's just kind of interesting. A lot of negative press towards Stoner, but, I hope the Vancouver government kind of looks at this because, one, it happened 2 years ago, which is kind of interesting that now it's coming up and he's being charged right at the beginning of the preseason. I find that kind of odd. So, I mean, there's more issues to this. I think there's a much bigger story, and I just hope that people look at the whole entire story, not just everything aimed at Stoner, Eddie.
Yeah, but I don't think that's going to be as big a deal as the Patrick Kane situation, like I mentioned, and Voinov and Stoll and Richards, and how the Ducks are going to have to deal with it, and obviously with Richards' contract being terminated, as well as Stoll and Voinov being deported to the States, and the Patrick Kane situation still up in the air. I don't see it being that big of an issue on how it's going to be dealt with. Like you said, he'll probably just be fined, if anything, and won't really face any jail time. So I don't think there's any need for the team to carry out any further action after that. So I think if it all gets resolved, even if he has to pay a fine and he's found guilty, I still think he will be an Anaheim Duck player and he'll be able to play hockey. So, but on the moral issue of the side, like you said, with the Vancouver government and how a lot of people don't want this law to be in place anymore, and it's hard to speak from that point of view when I'm not living in that area, but I mean it's something they're gonna have to look at and address as a whole community.
Yeah, exactly. And just in case people aren't aware, Eddie lives on the eastern part of Canada, Toronto, so he's not over on the Vancouver side. So, I'm not going to have you, quote or state for their side of the country. But yeah, it's definitely something that we're going to have to keep our eye on and see what happens. And I don't think, like you said, it's going to be that big of a deal. I think it'll get resolved, and it shouldn't be an issue. But it is unfortunate. Hunting for sport is something that I'm not really a fan of either. So hopefully it'll get addressed. Also going on in the news recently is the Ducks opened up their training camp this weekend. Actually went one day, and I plan to go to at least a couple more days this week, Eddy. And one thing that I noticed a big change in the strategy in the training that the Ducks have been doing is that they've been practicing for 3-on-3 play pretty often. They've had a scrimmage Saturday, Sunday, and they're going to have one Monday. And basically what they're doing is they're doing the 5-on-5, 20-minute halves or periods, if you would, is what they're calling them. And then they're finishing up doing 3-on-3 in preparation of the new rules. And it's pretty interesting. Some of the combinations out there that were thrown around is they had Perry with Vatanen and Lindholm. They had another one with Fowler, Sekach, and Ritchie. There was another of Kessler, Silverberg, and Fowler. So there's a lot of interesting combinations. We talked about this, Eddy, and it's going to be interesting to see who's going to play with who if a game ends up tied and they have to end up doing the 3-on-3 session.
Yeah, and I think that's just the coaching staff, trying to figure out who's their best options and who can provide the most in a 3-on-3 situation. Obviously, it's new, in the way it's being presented, and you have to find out, just like when you set up a power play or a penalty kill, you have to find out who are the best combinations that you can throw out there to try and win you the game. And it's going to be in a clutch situation in the game in overtime, so. You want to put out the best, line. Obviously, you could just say, oh, let's send out Perry, Getzlaff, and Kessler, but that doesn't always work. And them getting a head start, it's not too surprising, and it's nice to see from Boudreau's side.
Yeah, and another thing that I noticed too in this practice is the level of enthusiasm is extremely high. Perry and Kessler kind of went at it yesterday, kind of fencing with the sticks, so they're out there doing their thing. You can tell that they're ready to go and motivated. Brookbank actually looked pretty good. He scored a goal yesterday in the scrimmage on Saturday, and Wisniewski was out there playing tough as well. It's kind of interesting. What do you think about Wisniewski and Brookbank? A lot of people are talking about both these guys, but it seems like many people are calling them long shots to make the actual team.
Yeah, I know we discussed this with Thomas on last week's podcast, and I mean they'd have to really impress to make a shot at the lineup. I mean the top six, barring anything happening with Stoner, we're pretty certain that those are the six guys who are going to start. And even if something happens to Stoner, it's hard to see one of these guys jumping up in front of Manson or even Theodore or Montour or some other of the younger guys that are in the system. And even Shane O'Brien is down in the AHL as well. So there's a lot of competition for them to jump in front of, and I think they'd have to do something outstanding to prove to the coaching staff that they deserve a top six or seventh position on the starting roster.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think both of them are going to be difficult to crack the starting lineup, though. We may see them in San Diego for sure. Another thing about the San Diego team, if you look at it, I mean, the San Diego team is really going to compete for the Calder Cup. I mean, you're talking about Theodore and Ritchie, maybe having Brookbank and Wisniewski down there join the team. Shane O'Brien, we talked about Gibson being down there for a while. It's going to be fun times for people to watch hockey in California because not only are you going to have the Ducks that are going to do well, but it looks like the Gulls are going to be a pretty good team, Eddy, to compete this year.
Yeah, and that's the advantage of having a lot of your top prospects able to step out of their junior teams and play in the NHL, and having such a deep NHL roster where they're able to not jump up right away and get an AHL season or two under their belt. And it's going to be fun for people in their first season possibly of San Diego hockey, where they could end up making a run for the Calder Cup. And I'm sure we all hope that it'd be great for the rookies to get some competitive hockey in a longer season under their belts. And it would be great for the organization to get a win in their first season.
Oh yeah, it's going to be exciting for sure. Especially we talked about this too. The advantage of being just down the 5 freeway, and even if that's jammed up, there's the train as an option too to get the players going back and forth between Anaheim and San Diego and keep fresh down there. So it's going to be exciting to watch down there. Another issue that comes up that we've talked about with the team is the first line left wing. And I was kind of curious to see they had Hagelin up there with Getzlaf and then Stewart on the right wing. They switch out some of the groups, so I wouldn't put too much emphasis on Stewart being up there. But I thought it was interesting. Hagelin was on the first line, so there's no indication, obviously, of what's going to happen for sure. But it would be interesting, Eddie, if they do take Maroon off that top line and put Hagelin up there to get more speed. I think it would create a lot more scoring opportunities. I mean, they're already there, but they'd create even more for Getzlaf and Perry.
Yeah, it's definitely a possibility, but when you look at training camp rosters and the way the lines are set up, those change pretty much, every scrimmage that they have, and I guess the coach just trying to move guys around the lineup and get familiar playing with everybody on the team. Just you don't want to get them too comfortable on one line where they're not able to move up and down the lineup. And we see that every season Boudreau likes to move guys up and down whenever he feels that there's an advantage playing them on a different line. And playing Hagelin up there with Getzlaf and Perry would definitely create a lot more scoring chances, but it could also take away from some of the secondary scoring. So I'm sure they'll work out a good top six of who they think are going to play well together, and the bottom lines will end up sorting themselves out.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point there too, and this is something I talked to some of the fans when I was at Anaheim Ice. Is when you see these lineups right now, like you said, you kind of have to take them with a grain of salt because, as you mentioned, they're changed not only daily, but they're actually changed between the sessions. I mean, if you sit there and you go for the different sessions, because it's from 9 to 3, pretty much these last 4 or 5 days. You're going to see different people skating with different people regardless. So I try to tell people, they're obviously, playing with the lines and doing things, but we have a lot of new players, a lot of things to feel out. And as you said, Eddie, it's just a way to get everybody familiar. So, nothing's set in stone. But like I said, it just makes it interesting if some speed is added to the top line.
Oh yeah, for sure, and that's something we haven't seen in a while. And we've tried Sekach up there for a couple games last season. And a lot of people liked how that looked, and with the more and Edam's been up there too. Last season and a couple seasons before that as well. So having that option is always nice, and then having a complete opposite player pretty much, and Patrick Maroon is another option to put up there if it gives you good ability to match up against different teams.
Yeah, exactly. And, we'll keep everybody up to date on all that. We put up one little summary of the first 2 days. I hope to get there on Monday, and I'll put up another summary of days 3 and 4. And then obviously, we'll roll into the preseason. Tuesday, the Ducks have their first preseason game against Colorado in Colorado. And then on Friday, the 25th, I'll be there. We'll be hosting the Kings that night, and the scoreboard will be officially revealed. I know a lot of you have seen photos and whatnot, but the official scoreboard reveal will be there when it's actually lit up and you can see the way it's going to function, which is, it's going to be really, really exciting. It looks really, really good. So that's going to be coming up your way. Another little thing that came up too, there's a video of Ryan Kesler talking about this season and what the Ducks need to do, and it brought up some questions. I don't know if you saw the video, Eddie, but in the video, Ryan Kesler is wearing the A on his jersey. So a lot of people are asking, hey, is he the alternate captain? So it's kind of interesting to see. I did talk to some people from the Ducks. There's nothing official yet, but it seems like there's a pretty good chance, Eddie, that he's going to be the alternate captain.
Yeah, well, it'd be kind of hard for you to think that he would just put on a jersey with an A on it. Like, it's not like it's his own jersey with an A on it. I mean, if it would they really give it to him to put on if he wasn't the guy receiving it this season? So it's pretty much set in stone that he's the guy who's going to get it. And like we said before, it's pretty well deserved. I mean, there's a lot of guys in candidacy to get the A, but I mean, Kessler is definitely a deservable candidate after how he led a lot of guys when Getzlaf was having struggles in the playoffs last year, and definitely throughout the season as well. So I think it's a good appointment, and we just have to wait for it to be official now.
Yeah, and that's kind of the feeling I got from some of the people from the Ducks. They couldn't say officially on the record, but it looks like that's going to be the way. And we did that poll question with it too, and I think I can't remember the exact percentage, but we had an overwhelming majority that had picked Kessler to be the alternate captain, and then obviously the runner-up was Andrew Cogliano, who wouldn't have been a bad pick as well. So that looks like how it's going to go, though. I haven't heard any other changes. I'm pretty sure Perry's still going to be the alternate. Obviously, Getzlaf's still the captain. So, but just look for that official announcement. I'm sure it'll come out, within the next couple of weeks here. We also have a series of fan questions again, Eddie, that we got from people from social media. So I'll turn to those and try and answer some of the questions for you. We had Noah off Twitter that asked, can the Ducks go all the way this year and win the Stanley Cup championship? So what do you think, Eddie? I mean, we talked about it, but I mean, what do you think? Go all the way?
Yeah, I think with the additions and adding more depth and some more veterans to the locker room, and Sekach as a rookie getting into his sophomore season, and Silfverberg coming off signing a 4-year contract extension. So I think all these things coming together, if we can get some great goaltending from Anderson again, I think we have a really good shot. I mean, we're up there with probably, if you had to pick 3 teams who had a chance at the cup, we'd definitely be in there. So, I think the Pacific Division is going to be tough, like we talked about, but they should win it and make a long run in the playoffs and hopefully go all the way. I think obviously that's the goal of the team this year, and they had those T-shirts that they brought out, that said they close but not close enough, or something along those lines. So they have to get that extra distance this year, and I think they have what it takes.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to look at the team now, see how they're doing in the depth. And I think if you look at the depth, like we've mentioned probably, I don't even remember how many times, Eddie, but the depth of this team, especially at the center position, when Thompson comes back, we've mentioned this before, you've got Getzlaf, Kessler, obviously 1 and 2. You've got Santorelli, Raquel, Horkoff, Thompson, and then also Wagner as well at the AHL. You've got, the potential to have a team. Obviously, Wagner would probably stay down. You wouldn't have them all up there. But, I mean, you have a potential to play a team with 5 or 6 centers in a game. And I was talking about this the other day with one of my other buddies. I mean, it's a huge advantage when you can roll out a line and on a third or fourth line and have 2 guys that can take the faceoffs, Eddie. I think, that's going to be, in terms of depth, is one of the biggest keys for the Ducks heading into this season.
Yeah, and depending on how well Raquel has progressed in his role at center, you've got Horkoff, and when Thompson comes back, and Getzlaf, and obviously Kessler is one of the best face-off winners in the league. Just having those options and having a lot of guys who can come off the wing like Santorelli as well and take face-offs if somebody gets thrown out, it's just a great option to have. And depth at center, everybody talks about it around the league, and it's so important, and obviously having that 1-2, but also having those supporting guys who can win big faceoffs as well takes the pressure off the big guys.
Yeah, definitely. And one other thing that we've talked about too is this Ducks team is going to be entertaining too, Eddie. I'm going to say that the number of fights is going to be a little bit higher this year. If you look at the people that the Ducks added, you bring in Stewart, Shane O'Brien, McGrattan. You already have Jackman on there, Maroon. You have these guys, and Bieksa too. If you look at those guys and you look at the number of fighting penalties that they had last year, it exceeded the entire Ducks team last year. So this Ducks team, I think, is probably closest to the 2006-2007 team. I think really that they have depth at center. They've added speed, obviously, having Hagelin come in. Stewart's also got speed as well. And they've got, grit. I mean, this team really has it all. It's a complete team. And I just don't see any reason why they can't get to the Stanley Cup, at least, the final, Eddie.
Yeah, and like you just said, having all those things together is why they have such a good chance. They've always had size, and that's kind of the structure that they built around over the last few seasons, and then bringing them some faster players, and and Sekach, and now Hagelin, and having the those, just everything together, the size, the speed, the skill, just, having that all together is going to make them a pretty dangerous team this season.
And to go with that kind of goes into our next question from James off Twitter. He asks, a lot of fans talk about this year as a make it or break it year. And he asks, is it premature with the core already locked up, with the cap increases and the trade options, and what the Ducks have with the RFAs? And I think it's an interesting question. I don't think it is a make it or break it year necessarily. I mean, yes, I do think that they can go all the way, and yes, they should go all the way. But I think you'll agree with me, Eddie. I think this Ducks team is going to be good for several years.
Yeah, I don't think it's a make it or break it. I think that the goal and anything below, making it either back to the conference final or into the Stanley Cup finals is disappointing. But I don't think if they don't get that far, that it's over and they don't have any chances. I mean, it's a tough situation coming up with having to sign Lindholm and Vaughn and Anderson and even Gibson and Raquel and Sekach as well, and Dupre. Having to sign all those guys who are RFAs is going to be difficult. But there's always ways to work around that. And he said that the core, the pretty much the core of the team is locked up, barring, I guess, Lindholm and Anderson. You would think those would be two main pieces of the core, but the like you said, the cap increases, minimally, but increases every year, and there's also possible trade options if you wanted to move cap, not too many, like because the core is locked up, you don't want to move too many guys, and Stoner is one guy who he mentions, and everybody mentioned as being a guy who, if there is cap issues, you can either trade him, maybe at the deadline or in the off season or something like that to get around $3.5 million off the cap. But you also got to think too is there's a lot of 1 year deals, Horkoff and Stewart and Santorelli and a lot of these guys are signed to 1 year deals as well, so their cap comes off the books next year if they don't get re-signed. So I think it'll take some creativity from management, but I'm sure they'll want to re-sign all these guys, and letting an RFA walk, isn't really a realistic option for them.
Yeah, I don't think letting the RFAs walk either. If anything, the Ducks are going to have to try to sign these guys in the off season, as you mentioned. I think the defense is really the big issue with half of the guys being RFAs next year, and then the goalie situation as well. So I wouldn't put Murray past trading somebody sometime soon, at least during the season before the deadline. They could make a move, as you talked about, because letting one of these guys walk would not be the smartest thing to do, Eddie, especially with the talent that we have on defense and at the goalie position.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, you don't expect a big deal to go to Sekach or Raquel, maybe a small increase on their payments or a bridge sort of deal into another contract. And Wagner is a guy who's coming from RFA, you wouldn't expect a big deal from. But then you get into the more expensive guys. Khudobin's another guy who comes off the block, so that frees up some cap space. But Anderson's only making 1.15 million right now. You would expect him to get a pretty big increase if he has another good season, and even if they go on to win the cup, he could demand anything from 4 to 6 million. You would expect that, something like that, and that takes a big chunk out. And Lindholm's the next priority guy you'd expect them to sign. Then they might have to come in and decide between, Vatanen and Dupre and Gibson. And, the Vatanen could and Dupre, their value is kind of vague. The management will have to decide what they want to do with those contracts. And Gibson's kind of in the same position. He, doesn't have much NHL experience. They could give him a bridge deal, or he could end up walking if he wants to be paid somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly. On both fronts, I think you're right on the defense and goalie, and it's something that we're going to have to watch and see develop. Because that's where most of the contracts are going to be, ending in next summer and be on the RFA level. So we're going to have to watch and see what's going to happen.
Yeah, and that's the key too, though, is they are RFAs, so you're not in a terribly difficult situation if a guy does want to go or you can't, really resign them, you don't lose them for nothing in the end. I mean, you do get to have the chance to trade their rights away or a longer, like we saw this year with Silfverberg and Hagelin, a longer period to work on a contract with them. So they'll have all this season and into July and August next season to work on a deal if they want to get something done.
You hit the nail on the head, Eddie. Exactly. I was just going to go into that, so it was perfect. Yeah, I mean, like you said, they're RFAs, they're not UFAs. The Ducks are going to have a lot more options. So I don't think it's a make it or break it year. The Ducks are going to be good for several years. Obviously, we would like them to make it this year because, historically, each year we've gone one more round, Eddie. We've gone from round 1 to 2 to the conference final. So hopefully we get, the Stanley Cup final. The only other real comment I have is what did you think about the new the shirts? Some people talked about them. You remember last year it was unfinished business, and now some people were asking me about this year. It's close enough is not good enough. Did you like the slogan, or do you think they should have maybe come up with something shorter, or do you think it's the right mindset for the team?
No, I think it's the right mindset. I mean, they know that they were one game away from the Stanley Cup final, and anything could happen from there, playing the Tampa Bay Lightning. But I think it sums up what they know they have to do this season. I think they know they can get as far as they did last year, and they just got to take that one little extra step forward to get to that final and have a chance at the cup. And I think it summarizes what everybody thought and what everybody thinks the team needs to be able to do. So I think it's a good slogan for them to have for the whole season.
Yeah, I thought it was appropriate too, because I mean it's pretty much right there. Close enough is not good enough. I mean, maybe they could have dropped a word or two, made it a little bit shorter or something. Some people suggested that to me, and I go, well, I mean that's what it is, and it makes sense. So I think it's the appropriate mantra for the team this year, and they know what they need to do, and some of them have already talked about it. It's just a matter of going and doing it. So that's where we'll leave it with the team updates for now and all the fan questions. Some other updates for you in regards to Ducks and Pucks itself. Again, this week we're going to give away some preseason tickets on Facebook. Just go to facebook.com/Ducks and Pucks blog. On Monday, I will post another link with the actual photo of the tickets. I received my season tickets finally in the mail, so I will post a picture of them. We already gave away a pair earlier this month, but we're going to give away another pair. And then also we're going to have our contest, which we're going to start it tonight. If you're a subscriber to the podcast and you listen to our show, we're doing a similar type contest where each week we'll reveal a word that makes up a total phrase. And once all the words are revealed, which will be over the next 4 shows, you just email that to us, and then we'll basically pick a random person. So the word for this week is going to be ducks. So that's the word ducks, and then we'll give out some more words each show. It'll be in a random order, but it'll make up a phrase. And like I said, once we get to the end of those 4 shows, we'll remind everybody, put out my email out there for you guys to send it to us and get you that information. And one other last exciting news, Eddie, I worked out a deal. We're going to actually have a watch party for some of the games. I don't know how many yet, but I'm working with a restaurant down in the Orange Circle. I don't want to reveal anything yet because it's the parties are going to happen. I just don't know the exact dates and everything, and the location is set. But we're going to start doing that, a couple this year for the road games, and we'll give away shirts and merchandise as well to get people more pumped up. So some more good things coming. We keep trying to do more and more stuff. If you notice, the website's more up to date as far as mobile functionality and whatnot. Updates are coming. It's just taking a little bit longer on what I want to do, but that's going to be done too. And just keep up to date on everything, and we'll keep you guys where you need to be. And let's go Ducks.